Oh, 100%. Like, I remember both my kids are in rock climbing, and they both had pretty decent puck handling. And one of the parents we were talking, having a little small talk, and they're like, man, his puck handling and their grip strength is really good. What did they do? And I was like, at the time they were doing rock climbing and jujitsu. They're like, oh, that makes sense. The dad goes, they have grip strength. They do jujitsu. You're having to grab people, and then they're developing intrinsic hand strength from rock climbing, trying to grab like 10 millimeters of grip with your fingertips. And I was like, I thought about it, and I look, and their wrists were like, they had very mobile wrists. I never taught them how to puck handle. Number one, I just started playing hockey this year. My kids are actually teaching me how to play hockey. So I'm like, they're like, did you teach them? Now I'm like, no. I was like, if I taught them, it'd be the wrong way, because I know nothing about puck handling.
They're showing you the YouTube videos. Dad, this is how you're supposed to.
Yeah, like,
they learn so much faster.
Literally, I'm going to find somebody else who knows how to do it. But there's this carryover, but you see it at the pro level too. Like, if we're talking about basketball.
Yeah.
You take Steve Nash, you take Jason Kidd, and you take Kobe Bryant. They played a lot of soccer. They were really good at soccer too. Chad Johnson, they said he has the best footwork in NFL history, probably one of the best route runners. Not one of the best receivers, one of the best route runners. His footwork is insane. Go YouTube Chad Ochocinco or Chad Johnson and look at his footwork. But he talks about, like, he played soccer. He actually loved soccer more than football. He just happened to be good at soccer, great at football. But his footwork, he goes, I didn't learn this footwork in football. I learned it in soccer. Kobe Bryant, his footwork, we all know about his footwork. I know you're a Kobe fan. He played soccer in Europe. He learned how to steal attributes from one sport and use it on another sport.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody the other day about jiu-jitsu, about passing guard, and he found out I played basketball. He played basketball as well. And I'm like, oh, the feints that you're doing, he goes, that's basketball. It's like footwork. Like, I'm faking right. I'm feinting right to go left. Why not use that? Why not use that in jiu-jitsu? That's probably where you're getting your movement from. So when athletes are specializing in one sport, they're not getting the benefit of all these other, the movement vocabulary is going to be limited. They're going to be really, really good at baseball, and they're going to suck at everything else. They're going to suck at other sports, and structurally, their body's going to be very fragile. One point I want to make, I had a parent ask me this yesterday, because there's always FOMO. She asked me, she goes, well, if they take 3 months off of, let's say, playing baseball or wrestling or football or whatever, what's going to happen? Like, am I going to lose all that work? Because that's the fear. That fear, first of all, that fear doesn't just come from the parent. Fear comes because someone planted that seed. Who's planting those seeds? Coaches. Oh, your kid needs to play year round, right? So I told her, I said, give me 1 second. I feel a cough coming on. So I told her, I was explaining the concept of motor development, how when you initially develop a motor skill, it takes a long time, right? So David, you play basketball. How long did it take you to develop your jump shot?
Consistent training for a while.
How long is that? Years. Okay. How long, because you don't play basketball anymore, right?
Yeah.
Not competitively. For your jump shot to be the same, how long would it take this time around?
Not as long, but it would take a little bit of work in the body back into shape.
No. I'm talking about the specific skill of basketball.
Yeah.
A specific skill of basketball. How long would it take? A week? Maybe 2 weeks?
Last night I went shooting. At first, my jump shot felt a little rough. After maybe 30 minutes, I got back to what I felt like was
okay.
fine.
That's what I meant.
Not a lot.
Obviously, there's a difference between being fit and being conditioned for basketball, right?
Yeah.
That part would take time, but just to like have the general skill set
feeling,
right? I can. So I told her, when you develop a motor skill, to reacquire an existing motor skill that you haven't used in a while, it requires about 25% of the time, maybe even less than that. Obviously, depending on how big the gap is. I gave her the example of me playing basketball. When I was 32, I was in an adult men's league. I forget the name of the league. It's here in town in Marietta.
DRC League? DRC Men's League? No.
Why am I drawing a blank? It was at Mesa High School. Okay, so this is what happened. So I was talking to one of my clients, and we were talking about basketball, and they go, Henry, I was like, do you want to, my son has a basketball team. They're short one person on their roster. Do you want to play? And I said, sure. Let's give it a go. They're like, how long has it been since you played? I was like, sure. On the team? I was like 32 at the time. I think it was when I was like 17 years old, 16 years old. Long time.
Yeah. It's been a while.
So that morning I woke up. They're like I was like, when's the first game? They're like, it's tomorrow. I was like, oh my God, it's tomorrow. I said, okay. So I showed up, I warmed up my handles, my jump shot, did some layups. And then it was the most awful game I've ever played in my entire life. The wife, she was super sweet. She was like 65 years old. She goes, Henry, I could tell she was very assertive, but she was trying not to be mean. Maybe you got to like practice on your jump shot a little bit. I think I had airballed like twice. I missed a wide open layup. Like it was bad. Now keep in mind, I've said this, that basketball is my best sport. I think I'm better at basketball than any other sport I've played. And I've played a lot of sports. So ugly, right? I didn't see her for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. And then I had another game. She was there again watching. It was one of my clients. She's watching the game. I felt like nobody could touch me. I wasn't missing any shot. My handles, my timing was back. And she goes, oh my God. I was like, she goes, wow, you look like completely different. You've been practicing. And I said, no, I was like, maybe I play like 10 minutes a day because I have, full-time job. I'm not a child where I can just go spend 4 hours a day working on my jump shot, right? So I literally, no exaggeration, I was playing probably like, because in my gym there was a basketball court. I was probably shooting like 15 minutes a day, doing layups, getting my handles right. Like I would never recommend any athlete practice 15 minutes a day. But that's all I needed. Now that over the course of 2 weeks, she goes, you look like a completely different athlete. And I told her, I said, it's like riding a bike. I said, how long would it take you to reacquire the skill of riding a bike? She goes, oh, it'd almost be instant. Like probably within a couple minutes. I said, same thing here. So I told this story to my client yesterday about her son. And I said, once you develop a motor skill, learning new motor skills does not erase old ones, right? Sure, I'm not going to deny you're going to lose some neurological like conditioning. You're going to lose a little bit of timing. But if you have that skill set, to reacquire that skill set, it is a fraction of the time. They say 25%, like 25% is the average. But depending on how long you've done that skill, it would even be less. Because I played basketball my whole life, and within a week or two, I felt it back. Same thing. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for like 4 years, and I was sick all last month. I just couldn't catch. I had back-to-back sicknesses. I had that stomach flu was going around. I had COVID, I think. I couldn't breathe. I'm still coughing. It's been like a month and a half. I still have that cough. There you go. There's a cough. And I remember going to jiu-jitsu my first time. I think it was like a couple weeks ago. I've never taken time off from jiu-jitsu ever. I have never, from the time I started, I have never taken time off.
Yeah.
So for me to have like 2 weeks off was like eternity. And I got smashed. I went in, I couldn't breathe, my timing, I literally felt like that basketball game. I was like, dude, I don't even know how to do an armbar. Like, I don't even know how to escape side control. I felt like a white belt. Everybody was like having their licks on me, right? Literally the next day, I went back and rolled, and I was like, oh, it's all back. Literally, I just needed to like weather the storm one time, and then all those motor skills felt like they never left. They were just there. My timing was there. My reaction time, the fluidity of transitioning from one position to another position, that felt good again. Yeah. And I'm 36. You're going to tell me a 9-year-old who has nothing wrong with her body, they're not going to reacquire those skills again? And I've always known this, I'm talking about LTAD. I've known about this for a very long time, but now that I have kids, they're going through the LTAD process because I put my kids through the same type of development.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it with them. I'm like, oh my God, Jackson hasn't played football in like 3 months. Does he even remember how to throw a football? Are his mechanics going to be off? And then he literally looks better. Like he looks a little awkward at first throwing the ball. And then within like by his 10th, 15th throw, he's throwing further than he did 3 months ago, not having thrown a football.
I have another question. I want to ask you this one before I continue on to that one. Is it? I want to know if it's the neurological side because I've gone and I've played a sport, right? Yesterday, go and shoot, and that day I can feel a little off. I can wake up the next day though, immediately go to the court, and it's like immediately better. How much of that is going to bed, sleeping on it, your body kind of going into it further when you're sleeping and resting and thinking about it, and when you get into it the next day, you're just performing a little bit better than you were. Like the rest period of, I might play 1 week, feel like I'm terrible, take that week off, the next week I go right back to it, and I'm like better than I was before that week of terrible play.
So essentially, like the way motor skills work is when you don't use a motor skill for a while and then you use it again, the motor skills aren't going to be clean. Therefore, you're using a lot of effort. The analogy would be jujitsu. I've had a lot of people tell me like, oh, Henry has great conditioning, right? Like he doesn't get tired. Hell yeah, I get tired. If I had to break down all my athletic attributes, strength, speed, conditioning, all of that stuff, mobility, conditioning has to be at the bottom for me. Like my cardiovascular system is not good. But because I understand the movement and I can move subconsciously move the right way, the motor efficiency is there. Therefore, I feel, or maybe I come off as, oh, he's conditioned, right?
Yeah.
That's just motor efficiency, right? When you do something and you're exhausted, you haven't done it in a while, you're just lacking motor skills. You rest a little bit, you might be a little sore, you come back. So let's say, for example, you're using basketball as an analogy. Let's say you had a 2-year gap, you haven't played basketball, right? And then you play, and then you rest, and then 3-4 days later you go back. Well, that's a 3-day gap, not a 3-year gap. Yeah. So the gap is smaller, you're recovered, and you've reacquired that motor skill. Your timing is back. So that's why you're going, oh my God, I'm in basketball shape again.
Yeah.
I can play a full court game the same way I was dying in jiu-jitsu. And the very next day, I'm like, man, I'm going to be awful. Like how long? It literally felt like I took 6 months off. I was like, I don't know anything about jiu-jitsu. I can't move. I'm exhausted. I was breathing heavy, coughing. There's that cough. So that's kind of how that works. So for all you parents out there that get FOMO, fear of missing out, in case you guys don't know what that means. For all you parents that get FOMO that, oh, if I switch sports from, if I go from rock climbing to, I don't know, baseball to tennis,
yeah,
my kid's going to lose all these motor skills. That doesn't make any sense. Because motor skills, like I talked about, building up a movement vocabulary. If I teach you a new word in English, right? Does that undo all the other words you know? No, you're adding to that vocabulary, right? Now, certain words, like we're all guilty of it. Like my wife, she's the grammar police. So I apologize if you ever read any of my posts on Instagram and there's a grammatical error. I apologize. But my wife is like, you spelt that word wrong. Or I'm like, man, that's a word I haven't spelt in a long time. We sometimes we'll even question ourselves like, how the heck do I spell that? Haven't you?
Yeah.
And then you see it once and you go, oh, I remember now.
Yeah. Especially with our phones and how they'll finish the word for us.
Yes.
They'll fix it for us. We don't tend to think about it. And then I go to write something. It doesn't have an autocorrect. So then I'm like,
there's no autocorrect.
Wait, how do I spell that word again? And then I'm on my phone.
Like
how do I spell?
T-H-E. Duh.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought, but where was I at?
Grammar, poor grammar.
Oh, okay. Like motor skills. Like you don't lose motor skills by learning new ones. That doesn't make any sense. Now, there is one thing that should be playing in the background year round. So the skill side of it, you can take time off from it, but the two areas that you can never take time off of is the athletic development below that. So because those are the prerequisites to skill. So if, let's say, for example, if I said, okay, I'm going to take time off from basketball, but I'm also not going to work out. I'm going to stop doing sprint work. I'm going to stop doing power training. I'm not going to strength train. I'm not going to do conditioning. And I stop doing all of that. Oh, that's an uphill battle. That's an uphill battle. So as long as you continue to do your athletic work in the background, and then I'm doing my human work, which is my structural training. I'm working on mobility, flexibility. I'm working on the attributes that allow me to develop skill. You'll be fine. So that's a problem I've seen often in parents is they do intermittent training. I'll have parents where they'll hire me and they'll say, hey, can you help my son get faster? And I say, okay, cool. Yeah, we can do that. And then they get faster. And then I see the same kid, let's say 6 months later, and he's slow. And I'm like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, he got slower. We don't know what happened. I'm like, well, how often are you training speed? Like, oh, we're not. I'm like, how often do you train power? How often are you training conditioning? So how often are you doing mobility work? And they stop doing it. It's almost like they feel that because I teach them something, the body is going to magically maintain those attributes. So there's a big difference between motor skills and actual attributes. So if I stop strength training, right, your body starts to regress within 2 or 3 days. Because there's a constant state. There's two biological principles. We have the law of adaptation. Your body adapts to the demands you put on it, right? And then there's a law of accommodation, which is the opposite. Your body adapts to comfort. So if I do nothing, I get good at nothing. If I put my body through stress, I get good at stress. So if I stop training the attributes, strength, speed, power, agility, then I'm going to have big issues. And that's one of the problems that I see. Like we talked about all these non-contact injuries, is that people will do athletic training intermittently. They'll spend all this time on skill work, skill, but they don't train the things that allow us to they don't train the tools that we do skills with, right? Like my mobility, people stop doing mobility. I'll work with baseball players, and obviously there's a lot of stress on their shoulders and elbows and whatnot. And we do a lot of arm care. And then they start having an issue, and I'm like, with their elbow, I didn't see them for, a couple weeks. And I'm like, well, how much time did you spend on your elbow? They're like, oh, I really haven't done much. And I'm just like, okay. They're like, why not? They're like, well, my elbow felt great. I was like, yeah, because we were training it. Of course your elbow is going to feel good if I'm training your elbow.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they thought, and bro, I'm guilty of it too. When something feels good, we stop doing the thing that made us feel good. Like, oh my God, I'm doing the speed training. I'm getting fast. I feel my explosion going up. And then they think their body's going to magically just keep the speed, keep the power, keep the strength, keep the conditioning. That's not how it works. So yeah, motor skills, you can develop motor skills quickly, but we want to make sure in the background, year round, you're training movement,
Good.
keeping your body sound. You're training, multi-directional speed. You're training all these other things year round in the background. So if you're going to take time off from, let's say, for example, playing a sport, don't ever take time off from the development side of it. Because now when you do decide to, hey, I want to go play basketball again, the amount of time it's going to take you to acquire skill is very little if you have those prerequisites.
Yeah.
So like for me with jiu-jitsu, I said I've never taken time off ever.
Yeah.
However, I have changed how often I train it. So I used to train 6 to 8 times a week. I would train twice a day. Rare occasion, I would do 3 a day. Granted, where I work at, it was right next to Carlson Gracie. So I was next door. So if a client didn't show up, I'm like, you know what? Let me put my gi on. Let me just go get some more rounds in, right? So I had that luxury of doing that. Body started breaking down bad because what was I doing? I was doing all this skill work. And then I started doing very little because I was so exhausted from the skill work. My body was so broken down. Where am I going to get the energy to actually do a sprint, to do mobility work, to do all these other things? So now I've brought down my training frequency and skill, and I've increased my developmental. I'm working on speed, working on mobility, working on power, working on strength. And all of a sudden, even though I'm only training 2, 3 times a week, which for me is very, very little, all of a sudden I feel like my skills are going up again.
But majority of it is spending because your skills are you're just honing in on them at one point,
Yeah,
right? And majority of it is just making sure, okay, well, I have this skill, but if I want to be able to do this skill better than this person, it's not always having the better skill as it is, can I outperform him condition wise?
yeah,
Can I last 30 minutes while he can only last 20 minutes? Can I run faster than him? Can I do this? Because at that point, him getting the ball through his legs a little bit cleaner doesn't mean anything if he can't move faster than me.
correct.
So
Or let's say, I mean, this sounds like pure common sense. Let's say both skills are the same. Well, the person that's more well prepared, the person who has conditioning and strength and athleticism plus skill is going to beat the person that has skill only. You have no idea how many athletes I've met that have great skill, awful athletes. Like they can't move, they have no proprioception. Like it's just it's really bad. And these are the athletes that specialize. So just to kind of just bring everything to like a close, because this is a very deep topic. The important thing, if you're a parent, you have to factor in fundamentals, you have to factor in psychological development, you have to factor in social skills. And then you do it in stages. Long-term athletic development. Phase 1, active start. Phase 2, fundamental start. Phase 3, learning to train. Phase 4, training to train. Phase 5, training to win. And all of those stages are going to be roughly 2 to 3 years. And obviously every kid's going to be a little different. So every time I meet a kid for the first time, immediately I categorize them like, where do they fit? I find out their health history. I find out what sports they do. I find out what type of training they're doing. And that allows me to say, okay, oh, this kid's in the phase of training to train. Oh, this kid's having burnout because their competition is at an 80% ratio and their development's at a 20%. They're doing 80-20 and they're 12 years old. So once you understand, even on a basic level, like long-term athletic development, your decision making is going to be way more clean. And you're going to have an athlete who's going to continuously be peaking every year, constantly developing. You're going to have minimal injuries. And if it doesn't work out, and let's say they don't go to college, they don't go pro, they're going to have a love for fitness. Because at the end of the day, I've talked about our mission is to impact athletes, impact the next generation. I want kids to move. When they're 50 years old, if they're still moving and they're like, man, when I was a kid, I played sports and I've just always been into fitness. Like we did our job right. And if they have a healthy relationship with competition, they're going to take those skills and apply it to family, apply it to their career. Yeah. So long-term athletic development isn't just about how do I create a super athlete. It's about